Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and those of you visiting us on Zoom. Welcome to the Lakewood session with our Pierce County Representative Janie Hitchen here for the 6th District here, and we're discussing our legislative policy manual with Pierce County. And of course, just today is December 14, 2023, and we have a little bit of pizza on the table, so forgive us. It's during the dinner hour, and we're accommodating to our schedules. So tonight, we want to talk about some successes and some thank yous that are in order for all of your work on behalf of all the residents in the 6th District, including those here in Lakewood. And we have some discussion items based on our 2024 Pierce County Legislative Policy Manual that we want to just kind of review. And then we want to open it up just to some conversation back and forth, because we're pleased to have you. And it's always great to have a chance to have open dialogue on matters of mutual importance. So first, the thank yous. The county transferred ownership this year of the old Settlers Cemetery. It's on Washington Boulevard to the city. I was pleased in my other day job role to have a chance to actually review the transfer documents. And it was wonderful to see that government actually works in action. So we sent the draft over to the city of Lakewood for signatures, and boom, it was back in like 10 minutes. And our friends at the county were astounded how quickly we were able to get signatures back. So I just want to say we appreciate your work on that on our behalf as well. Also want to thank you for supporting the city and opposing the use of JBLM as a commercial airfield, as well as the identification of any location that would impede the operations of JBLM. And we know that that was an issue of importance for many folks in Pierce County, especially out in the Parkland-Spanaway area as well, and Thurston County down there. So it continues to be an issue of concern for operational readiness. We also want to thank you for the continued partnership with Pierce County, and as well as our neighbor to the north, University Place, working together on the Chambers Creek Trail project. We know phase 2 is expected to begin and be completed in this next year, 2024. And that'll be another really good collaborative parks project between the county, the city, and University Place. Speaking of parks and improvements, we have Seeley Lake here, and we're pleased to have the continued partnership with the county at the Seeley Lake Conservancy Park. And we look forward to expanding the use and making that area more accessible for park users. And if you've had a chance to see, Lakewood did a really good job of kind of limbing up the brush in that area, making it much safer for people to walk. And it's, I think, getting much more use. We also appreciate the partnership in support of Losses Prairie Oaks Commons 25-unit affordable housing development. As you know quite well, the county committed $3.5 million to that project, and we have our contribution as well. And I think we're well on our way to assisting LASA hit their $10.5 million goal. Of course, we have some bumpers on that, as does the county, to make sure that those funds are really going to be obligated before they have to be expended by the end of 2026. So I know that you'll have eyes on that project, as will we. So discussion items tonight. So we have the legislative policy manual, and I'm going to try not to obviously read things, but rather point them out and then just have some discussion items. The first one, of course, near and dear to all of our hearts, is middle housing. And that's found on page 7 of our legislative policy manual packet for you. And the specific point I kind of want to make there, the council supports the dialogue with the county and other utility partners to how to best address fee schedules and those side sewer connections for Lakewood customers seeking to add density, the critical housing density in the form of ADUs. So we're looking for support, creative thinking outside the box, to find solutions to reduce or waive connection fees and perhaps some capacity charges for customers who are seeking to provide that source of housing for all of us here. And we think that ADUs, we've had the ADU opportunity in our code for some time. And now that the legislature made it even more of a flexible priority, we really want to see it work. And so we think that similar to other incentivization tools like the MFTE for multi-use housing, this kind of approach to reduce the cost barrier for ADUs as a project in partnership with the county could be very effective. So we're hoping for some work in that regard. On the recreational side, page 8 discusses our work with the Camp Murray Boat Launch. As you may know, American Lake is a very busy place, and we put a fair amount of resources into both American Lake Park and Harry Todd Park. And what we have found over the years is that there's just so much desire for use and access to the waterways that we need to find a way to alleviate the pressure and burden on those two sites for boat access. One way to do that is to partner with the state on the Camp Murray Boat Launch. And so we have been discussing with the folks at Camp Murray for some time the opportunity to develop a master plan to improve the boat launch, to not only improve pedestrian access, bicycle access, but certainly boat access to the area for those folks who really want and deserve access to the lakes in Lakewood. We appropriated $100,000 in ARPA funds to help develop that master plan. It's going to be a 2024 project, and we just wanted to inform you of that and let you know, certainly in that area, it would serve another census district in the city where folks really deserve more access to the waterway. And this could be a very effective partnership in that regard. Housing, on page 11, we talk about the Pierce County Village, and I need not educate you on that because I know how knowledgeable you are and how involved you are in that in your day job. But Lakewood has allocated $1 million of its ARPA funds in support of that project because we again recognize the value of partnerships. We value the county's partnership with us, and we hope that this is a step in good faith on our part to support the county. This project, again, as you well know, is a site that is environmentally sensitive. And when we had our discussion to allocate the $1 million, it was important to us, even though we're not part of the watershed necessarily there, we are recipients of the impacts to the watershed. And so we were very concerned about contamination to the surrounding area and the watershed, and really wanted to make sure that our money went to a project that maintained the environmental sensitivities of the area and ensured that the county was providing for adequate infrastructure by way of sewer connections. And I think that that is now in the county's plan. So we just wanted to make sure that you understood that we're on board in terms of ensuring health and safety of the community residents in the watershed with that caveat on our funding allocation. Page 12, opioid settlement funds. So we're all pleased that the litigation has somewhat concluded, and we're now starting to see the fruits of the collective partnership labor in that regard. We are going to receive about $1 million over the time frame of 2022 through 2038, which means it's not a ton of money. It's about $80,000 a year. And what the city council discussed for Lakewood is, rather than at this time aggregating the funds on a regional level, we have a fabulous citizen advisory board that deals with and receives and reviews applications for funding to provide services directly to Lakewood residents. And so the council's directive at this time is to allow that citizen advisory board to have those funds available and to receive the applications and really dig into and review the needs in this community before we elect to consider throwing our money in the greater pot, because we think this would be better serving Lakewood residents. So we just wanted to give you a heads up on that. Public safety, likely near and dear to all of our collective hearts. Pages 13 and 15 through 15 discuss that. As you may have heard, we were a bit of a convening authority in August for a collective group of mayors and city managers, town administrators, and their respective chiefs of police. And we had a really frank and open discussion about our collective experiences and concerns. And the outgrowth of that conversation was a focused letter, a copy of which I think you have, that discussed, again, from our collective conversation, what we felt were really the top 5 asks of our legislators this year, because we knew that it was going to be a short session. It's likely very difficult to get funding for many things. So the two big ones were really policy directives. The first of which is to add stolen vehicles among the crimes that can be subject to police pursuits. And that is something that is data-driven. Our police chief, as well as the police chiefs and town administrators and city managers and mayors for all those other cities and towns in Pierce County, were on the same sheet of music that we need help in that regard. So when we brought that up last night, it wasn't the first time that our legislators have heard our plea and pitch, but it's unfortunate that the response is there's likely no quote unquote appetite to address that needed change this year for whatever reason. And part of it, you know, politics being as they are, there are different agendas with different groups and different majorities. But we would hope that we could speak with one voice, because so many of the cities and towns in Pierce County are saying, we need help. So we want to keep you on board in terms of the education piece, let you know where we are with that ask. And to the extent you can lean in with our fellow legislators at the 28th and 29th, we would certainly ask that you help us with that. The other tools that we've asked for, again, are outlined on that particular page 13. Those are the public safety asks, again, providing those tools to address auto theft and property crime. State funding would be helpful to grant programs that support those regional enforcement and prosecution efforts. As I discussed, we want refinements to the restrictions on vehicular pursuits to actually curb motor vehicle thefts. We do believe that committing ongoing state funding for therapeutic courts will help satisfy the new state drug possession law. And as the deputy mayor and I observed this last week, we both sat in at the invitation of our municipal court judge to observe Veterans Court. And it was heartwarming to actually see a therapeutic court in action. And the judge also articulated that they received about $187,000 grant to stand up a community therapeutic court as well, in addition to Veterans Court, because Veterans Court, as you know, is specific to those who qualify. Got to be a veteran, supposed to be service connected, those kinds of things. This will broaden that opportunity for good therapeutic court in lieu, good diversion in lieu of incarceration. So again, we're doing what we can, and we are asking our state legislators to consider ongoing state funding for that particular therapeutic court model, because we think it is a good one. We also seek stable state funding for the co-responder programs, such as the behavioral health contact team that's been really a great success for Lakewood. We were one of the initial jurisdictions to have that several years ago when it was stood up. And the city manager, through council direction, funded a second position in the next budget. And so we think it's a win-win for the community and for those people who need and deserve the services. And we're looking for stable state funding for that. And then finally, on the asks on the public safety side, we asked for amendments to state law to allow for a parent or guardian to provide consent for those juveniles who are detained so that they can be interviewed by law enforcement, including obtaining their consent to search property, to resolve unsolved crimes and to prevent future incidents. And there was a really good conversation last night about the desire to assist youth avoid entering into the criminal justice system, because sometimes the police officers in their role can exert, I don't want to say a fatherly or motherly sort of shoulder or some advice, but they can't even have a conversation with the youth in the absence of their first being afforded the opportunity to have legal counsel to speak with them. So it makes it really cumbersome for the cops out in the field to talk to people. And we had 3 or 4 specific examples, one of which occurred just recently. You heard about the 4 juveniles that were pursued, not even a high-speed chase pursuit, just kind of followed to the end over by one of the middle schools, and they bailed out of the car when the police officers turned on the lights. And 2 of the youth were detained, and one went into the wetlands area, and they were trying to coax him to get out, and one took off and ran, and they couldn't talk to the individuals about the identity of the kid who took off and ran because they were trying to get the other gentleman out of the swamp, and obviously it didn't work out well for him. So there are complications with removing the ability for the police officers to, at that time, in real time, have a conversation with youth. And so we're looking for changes to state law in that regard. And I asked of our police chief or assistant police chief the other night, said, is this something that you really see as an important tool? And his response was an emphatic yes. This is something they really want to see change because they think they can positively not only reduce juvenile crime, but positively impact juvenile lives with a proximate ability to have a conversation while they're detained. So I'd ask support on that. Geographic equity in the discharge from state facilities. Again, this is one of our legislative asks. We had, through the assistance of Representative Bernowski, a commerce report that was produced in April of 2023 that talks about the need for the state to procure additional resources and supports in different counties and different regions around the state. The only way we're going to get geographic equity in the discharge from state facilities like Western State is if there are adequate facilities for these folks to go to. So it's really going to be all of us leaning in together to try to make this work. And we know it can happen because a couple of years ago, the governor's office was able to rally $570 some odd million in support to rebuild Western State Hospital. So we know that if the need is apparent and the need is great, that we can find a way to fund the proper facilities so that we get that geographic equity and discharge. It's important to Pierce County and not just Lakewood. Video arraignment at Pierce County Jail on page 15. This is something that apparently predates me by 2 or 3 mayors. Apparently Doug Richardson, when he was mayor and then as a county council member, was asking for solutions with the county to work on, the issues that impede the ability for video arraignment at the jail. So we're looking to see if the county can perhaps allocate the necessary resources to provide for video arraignment. We're still not sure what the impediment is. If it's money, we should be able to figure that out. This ask has been in place since at least 2015 when we first began video arraignment in partnership with the Nisqually Indian tribe through the jail facility. So something to look into. And it seems like it could be a modest change, but maybe it is a huge monetary change. We don't know quite what the impediment is, but it's something to look into. Page 18 discusses the Pierce County sewer utility. And we know this is something already kind of on the county's radar. They're reviewing, I think there's sewer utility expansion plans or whatever the formal title is, but we certainly urge the county to proactively plan for and build their sewer system expansions in passed over areas of the county's urban area as it updates its unified sewer plan. So we would ask the county to collaborate with Lakewood to incorporate planning assumptions based upon the 2044 growth targets that we all are well aware of, as well as the increased housing density patterns that we are now required to plan for through House Bill 1110 and House Bill 1337, including the ADU issue we just talked about. So it's an interesting thing because we got a plan for growth. We all know we have to. We now have tools to address planned growth through ADUs or other housing densities. And now we really need to proactively plan and incentivize the connection to sewer and sewer utility hookups. So those really, in a nutshell, in 15 short minutes are kind of the highlights of the legislative priorities that Lakewood has prepared as part of our county legislative policy manual for 2024. And so I kind of open it up for just a general conversation, discussion on any of these points or anything else you may have.
So first, I'll start with a thank you for inviting me again. I found this really informative last year and to be able to have the dialogue and share priorities and learn more about the why from Lakewood's perspective. Some things were important. So if I was asked with my county role, it made me a better advocate about programming. If things came my way, like, why does Lakewood want this? And I'm like, well, let me tell you why, which made an easier conversation because I had an answer. I think can I just follow the same format and go through any that I like kind of thought about?
Sure.
So the county itself has been through SHAPE and a couple other organizations, the idea around ADUs and kind of how that's going to work with sewer connections and water connections. We have a ton of different entities in unincorporated Pierce County that we have to work with. The sewer's easier for us. But then the conversation around what do you do if it's a septic system, but they're allowed to do an ADU because we've got these pockets that are like that. So it's definitely something that we're looking at. I think that we can kind of think about how our city partners are going to be impacted. And so if we're doing something for us that's working and increasing density, I know I sent you my thoughts on your ADU proposal, and my concerns about it becoming for profit, because people will come in, turning them into short-term rentals. So, and it really is something that I've heard in other counties. It is truly a profiteering thing. So if you didn't read that email, one of the things that I've been looking at with short-term rentals is when organizations are bringing ADUs on, which is a great idea, small mother-in-law apartments or areas and spaces for, one or two people to live on your property. For profit out of your community sometimes will buy the house and the ADU and then rent them separately or together, which is not, I think, the intent we have with ADUs. So, separate conversation, but just one of the things I'll be kind of continuing to look at. But it's not going to work if it's so incredibly expensive, and we want to increase density. And we know in single family zoning, you have big lots. They're large lots. And so I think it's an easy way to keep the character of a community, of a neighborhood, but increase density at the same time, as opposed to saying, hey, let's put up a 3-story apartment complex, which in some places might work. In some places obviously wouldn't. So
I've got it top of mind.
Yeah.
Because I want to help provide as much information, education as we can. On the short-term rental issue, you probably heard our discussion. We had similar concerns that were bantered around. And in response to either a newspaper article or something, I got a really nice packet of information from Gig Harbor, where they struggled over this issue. And there was a person who was involved in the Citizens Committee, and she gave me a bunch of information about how they came to adequate regulation, if you will, of the short-term rental issue in their community. And so we're going to look at that, but I will share that with you so you can see what they went through and how they grappled with it. I was at a land use seminar this week, and Chelan County, there was a court case that came out of Chelan County in October that dealt with this issue, and they went through the regulatory piece. And so I think what will happen is we're going to work on adequate regulations that will address the concern so that you don't have this profit-making thing with 2 units on one lot. But I can't speak for the whole council, but we're gonna work on that.
Yeah, no, and the good neighbor, like how to rate, like I literally the neighbor across the street
Absolutely.
is turned part of their house into a short-term rental, an Airbnb. Didn't notify me. They don't have to because we have no regulation. But like there were suddenly people, lots of random people parking out front. And so those are the kinds of things that how does your community deal with that? Because someone might call the police on somebody who's doing what they thought, they show up in an Airbnb, they think they're supposed to be here. How are you communicating? Things like that just become problematics for
well, it is problematic. And one last thing, and I won't interrupt you, but the issue of addressing middle housing and ADUs and dense neighborhoods promulgates the issue of parking on-site, off-site. Right. And the master builders came over and wanted to meet with us because they thought we were going to, ban all off-site parking. And I said, we're going to have a conversation about it. So more to follow on that.
Okay.
But it's an issue for lots of people. Right.
Yeah. Well, and we just have a lot of people that want to call Pierce County home. So we're trying to deal with that. Let me know how I can help with the Campburn boat launch. I think it's fantastic. I learned to wakeboard on American Lake, so I think it's a wonderful place. Pierce County Village, we too are keeping eyes on it as far as the permitting process, and we knew that going into it, the permitting of it was going to be a challenge, and tried to be as clear as we could, and so and as supportive because we know it's such a need. the opioid settlement funds, if things come up, please use me as a resource. I've kind of been tapped to be the person at the county to kind of lead that work. It'll go through my committee.
Great.
And because I kind of jumped in and helped facilitate the conversation to get the OAC set up. And I've started those conversations with other municipalities. It seems to make a lot of sense that it would just stay with me. And then I will say that I really appreciate the idea. I think that's a great way to start if things don't work or as far as like putting it out through your committee, or there's something that you want to do bigger, but you're like, this is a need, right? But we can't do this as Lakewood. Like we need detox beds, or we need something for juveniles, but we can't set something over. Actually, you have something, I think, for juveniles, but if there's something missing, you know, is there a way to partner with other municipalities or the county, or we can look at some of those things? And we are having conversations geographically, like I want a map. I want to know where every single service is available, and does it cost money? Do they take Medicaid? Like what are all the things, so that I can actually figure out where are my holes? Where do I truly, somebody says, I want help today, and they're 27 years old, and they have housing. I feel like they should be able to find help, and I'm hearing no, they can't, and we have waiting lists. And then when you add homelessness or mental health, or they're juvenile.
Transportation issues.
Yeah, I mean, all the things. So that's really having a firm understanding so that we can work with our city partners that received funds. And then I have all the cities and towns that didn't receive funds are under our cap as well. So how do I help Roy? How do I help some of my smaller communities? I think DuPont got funding, but Stillicum did not. So, you know, it's like, how do I help the town of Stillicum if they have somebody who's experiencing crisis? So, but that'll be really good work and kind of what we're working on. For public safety, we continue to kind of, and I'll leave our legislative items that we had. And so for us, for public safety, there's some overlap. We're really interested in the behavioral health resources, the civil conversion, which doesn't really impact you, and yet it kind of does, because some of them came from Lakewood and they're deteriorating in the jail, and then when they come back into community, they're worse than when they went in, and that doesn't help anybody. So kind of working on that. We are looking at, as far as the criminal justice resources, I don't know if you have shortages, we still have shortages. And so really trying to figure that out, and looking at how we can do blood draws is one of the things. And I don't know if that's an issue. We
have the staff that are able to do the blood draws here.
And we have some, but there's some of it's like the testing aspects of it. And so there's just like, so I'll leave it with, I brought multiple copies. And then focusing on youth gun violence in our community. And I know that Lakewood's had some issues with that as far as.
Don't forget the vehicular pursuit one. That's a biggie for us.
I know, and that is not on this list. I know it's been a conversation, and one of the ones that we've continued to have the conversation around. And I know that you helped us with data, and there was a not disagreement, misunderstanding, something around how we interpreted the data, or we're missing some data. Is the unintended consequences for the profiling, and what you have clearly outlined in this letter that I appreciate is that you said, this is about cars that we know they're stolen. Like, we've run the tags, there's a report, and we want to be able to pursue those cars because we know there's an active crime, because it's really hard to get behind the wheel and drive away in a stolen car without knowing you're driving a stolen car. It's not just randomly pulling people over. So I appreciate that that's the way that you're approaching this. It didn't make it onto our list, but it doesn't mean it's something that hasn't impacted us as a county and a community. So I am hearing similar things from our legislators that they don't know if it's something they're going to take up, but I think it's worth continuing. We are seeing car thefts kind of level off. It doesn't feel like it every time on Facebook. It's been stolen. But I know it's the numbers and the Kia Boy challenges and some of the other really
challenging,
crazy that I just.
Have we educated you a little bit on steps we are taking on our own with technology? Did we tell you a little bit
I
about the
think you're
flock
doing
camera
the same
system?
thing that we're doing. Is it Flock?
Flock, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah,
We've
we
deployed
actually,
about 36 so far in the city, and the data shows an incredible number of hits, number one. And we're actually seeing some impact where it looks like we're bending the curve on auto thefts as people start to understand that we're there watching.
now is that the system that's mounted or is that the system that's on your vehicle?
Mounted
Okay,
in entrances around the city.
okay,
Mhm.
okay. 'Cause
And
the
that's
one-
actually how we followed, we didn't pursue necessarily the boys that went to Lockburn and then parked over there by the Flood Dairy area. We saw the car come through on Flock and then kind of converged on them, put the lights on, followed them there. Wasn't high speed. They jumped out and bailed. We got a couple of them. One took off into the swamp and the story is the story. But that was an example where Flock picked it up initially.
And allowed for safe pursuit? I don't know.
Exactly.
Considered pursuit,
Yeah.
but-
So it's not a pursuit, that's
Yeah.
correct. So what happens, council member, is,
Safe follow.
when a stolen vehicle comes in to the city and the camera picks it up, so all police vehicles that are on duty are notified. And so what they do is they then kind of meander over to that area, they identify the vehicle, they stay back from it and they follow it. And there's been a number of occasions where the vehicles have come into our commercial areas and people start getting out of the cars and they got their masks on and they're gonna go rob a business here, whether it's Marshall's or the dollar store or something. It's happened on numerous occasions or a handful of occasions so far. And then the police come in, and then they notice, oh, the gig is up, and then they jump back in the car and they go speeding off, but we can't pursue them. But the good news is that they are now notified, oh my gosh, how did they know that we were here? And so the word is beginning to get out to the criminal element, really don't come to Lakewood. And as the mayor pointed out, it is having a positive impact on our numbers. But what's happening is that the criminal community adapts very quickly and they're just gonna go to the areas where these aren't. The other, and I want to commend our new police chief, Patrick Smith, for bringing not just this new type of technology, but other ways of doing business here as it relates to police work. But in 2024, what he wants to do is reach out to the business community. He's actually had some conversations with some, like our town center owner here, and allow them to buy a Flock camera. Now, we can't buy it for them because that's a gift of public funds, but they can buy it, they can put it up on their property, and then they can connect into our system. So then we have more eyes on the road looking for stolen vehicles that are then coming onto private property. And again, it sends a signal to the criminal element. So, but that is just one way. And a number of other cities, I know Kent and a handful of other cities here in Washington State have implemented it. And it's proven to be very, very successful.
Councilmember Bell.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to that yes, the Flock, and reiterate, Flock speaks to other Flock in other cities, so it's really important. And I think it's a really useful tool. I know that we have found it useful here, and I've heard, that, oh yeah, it started out here, and you see that on the news where a car will start in one place. But because the city is using the Flock system, it was easier to track.
Cameras of a feather flock together. Isn't it? Yeah.
Is that their motto on the
Yeah,
bottom of the
exactly.
camera? Yeah, and I'm 99.9% sure we have a contract with Flock. Don't we? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, they seem to be the big players on the block, so. So I think, so the discharge for state facilities, we continue, that is. There are not enough facilities in other jurisdictions, especially smaller counties, and the other part was that we were seeing, and I've done a lot of learning around this prior to Western State kind of going through this new transition where when they would harm someone while on campus, then they became basically a resident because they were charged with a crime. And so then they became our concern, even after they were done with whatever services they were providing. So it is something that we continue to talk with all of our state partners and agencies, and it's a conversation that I have at a federal level with the National Association of Counties is, how are you doing this? Because we went really far away from institutions.
Mhm.
It's one of the reasons we saw the spike of homelessness. When those went away, people didn't have a place to go. We didn't actually replace it with anything. We just shut down the institution. And rightfully so, many of them were absolutely horrific, but we didn't replace it with anything.
Mhm.
So we designed it, we broke the system, I guess. And so we're kind of paying for it now, but we have a lot of people who really do need, permanent supportive housing. And so our 1/10 of 1% sales tax, we've carved off a portion of it that really will be, to help build those types of facilities countywide, not in one area. But also to provide some of the funding to keep it going because it can be very expensive to run those. They can pencil out, but if you're talking about the lowest of the low as far as income or no income, who needs around the clock care,
Yep.
there's a funding source. So that new sales tax is going to be really helpful. And so that's something we'll be working with our partners across the region because we
Absolutely.
can't just put them all in one place, but it's a
And-
burden. And Lakewood has a lot of facilities
Yep.
already, a lot of, I always want to call them shared houses, but it's no,
Adult family
group
homes,
family home,
right?
yeah.
Over
Um,
100. Mhm.
Yeah, so, and so that's one aspect, but these are more, like we have Aspen Court, we have the new hotel over here,
Mhm.
Candlewood Suites,
Mhm.
the Marine Howard, and then there's another one in Tacoma. And so how do we continue to kind of look for those gaps and get them out? And then, on that note, I am also spearheading, the work on our unified regional approach, and I'm gonna hope that Lakewood will engage with me. We're gonna be working with an outside entity. Will put out a contract to bring somebody in, somebody like what happened with SHAPE, where there really was this
Mhm.
build trust between the city partners, the county, and then we add the third element. I also need my nonprofits.
Mhm.
And the unified regional approach is really not, it's not a funding agency. So if you've heard about the King County model that kind of has turned into a mess. We're not doing that. They're not a funder. They're not gonna be you don't get to do your own thing. They're truly gonna be thought partners.
Mhm.
They're gonna be data brokers. They're gonna be the ones that help chase money for jurisdictions. They're gonna be finding the gaps and then making the data as transparent and easy for everybody, both those of us in municipalities,
Mhm.
but also for community who's like, I need a bed tonight for
Right.
a person with a dog. Where do I go? And I should be able to find that answer no matter where I am in Pierce County. And right now, it's you call down a list if you know where the list is.
Mhm.
And so really unifying that so
Mhm.
that we know where our systems are succeeding and where they're
Yep.
failing, so that we can then pursue funding to collaboratively in areas to bolster that system. Now that we have funding sources, so, and it's called the URA is the acronym, so Unified Regional Approach.
And that was one of the reasons that Lakewood didn't do its own 1/10 of 1%, because that was an area where we clearly knew that a regional solution was necessary because the homelessness issues and the mental health issues know no boundary between cities and county.
Yep.
So we appreciate that. Let's work together on it. That'll be great.
So that's my one on my work plan for 2024. It's just a small thing.
Small thing.
Yeah. So video arraignment, I feel like we had the same conversation last year and I went back and asked, and I swear we do video arraignment, but I don't know who the video arraignment is for. So obviously not for Lakewood. So I don't know what the deal is. So I will go back and ask again.
Because I've had people say, oh, we've done it for years, and so no, you don't do it.
Yeah.
But
And I thought that we invested dollars in like upgrading something. So
Maybe
I
we'll
will
have
go.
Michael check in with your staff member, and just double check where we are with that, because I know we use the Nisqually Jail right now
Yep.
on a contract.
Yep.
And we haven't been obviously using the county.
Because we haven't allowed misdemeanors, because, yeah, out here.
So the latest update I had gotten from our court was that, yes, the county was doing video arraignment during COVID.
Oh.
And then in certain circumstances, kind of reverted back to the old
Okay,
way, but let us follow up. The good news is it's a lesser of an issue for us now.
Right.
because we are using wholeheartedly Nisqually. And so, you know, we use Pierce County for felonies.
Mhm.
And then really the only time that we need a hearing from somebody that we book into Pierce County is if they have an attached misdemeanor that then runs through our municipal court. And so then that's where we would like to have the video arraignment.
Kind of the one-stop shop, so to
So
speak.
that's correct. So it's more the exception than the norm.
Okay,
So
so we have somebody with a felony who also has a misdemeanor.
that's correct. Yeah.
Okay,
That's correct.
okay. I will double check that again. So, I know that so I know our sewer utility continues to figure out how to expand. There's some, projects they're doing and really, I mean, Pierce County is way ahead of the game as some of our other partners. So, really, they continue to look at, different ways, like I think they're working on, capturing some of the methane gases and trying to
Good.
repurpose that
Mhm.
is one of the things that was funded in our budget. And then really working on how we have all these funds to try and build housing and we know sewer hookups can be really expensive. And we know we've had this fund for, nonprofits and low-income projects to access. And so we really wanted to wrap our hands around that this year and go, okay, what if we increase that? What does that do? How,
Mhm.
is that gonna help? So really understanding and then really who's getting that money?
Right.
How much is it being used for? Is it working the way we think? If we're putting $1 million in, are we getting $1 million worth of housing out of that? I mean, if I'm spending that much on it, I should be getting a lot more. And so trying to figure out the kind of the push and pull there.
Mhm.
So, because with the density, we need people on sewer. We can't densify on septic. It doesn't work.
Well, and we're, I would say fairly lucky, but we're fairly lucky in Lakewood that years ago there was a big push to extend sewer throughout Lakewood. There's still some areas that don't
Mhm.
have sewer. I talked to our public works director and he said he's, sending out notices to, I don't know how many homes in the Tillicum area where their time is up, right? Because we gave an extension of time after the utility was constructed for them to hook up once it became available. And then their extensions have now dried up and they've got to hook up. So it's going to be interesting to see how well they're able to do it. We don't have a ton of resources to help facilitate by way of loans for that. And it's not cheap,
Mhm.
Mr. Nuffield.
Well, actually, Mayor, we do have ways to help them. But Councilmember, I would echo your comments. Yeah, the Pierce County Sewer Utility is actually doing a great job updating their unified sewer plan. And so, and the city of Lakewood is at the table with them. And the reason, and so this is a good update actually for you. And, part of our reasoning for being at the table is that when Lakewood was first sewered back in the 80s, so now we're 30, 40 years. And Pierce County Sewer is aware of this. So as we look out the next 20 or 30 years, okay, when do those pipes need to begin to be replaced? And then, of course, we have all these other additional requirements. So,
Right.
so we just want to keep that in front of you. Particularly as, someday in the future, it could be, 20 or 25 years where, the Pierce County Sewer is going to be asking for millions of dollars to, upgrade sewer lines here in Lakewood. So it's about preparing for the future.
Does it go without saying that we coordinate with Pierce County Sewer like we do Lakewood Water when we're doing a big road project? There's an opportunity to update if they need to.
We do, Mayor, and, but quite frankly, that doesn't happen very often because again, your infrastructure is still relatively new here in town. But they do take advantage of doing some maintenance or taking a look at things and when we do open up the road. So they appreciate that and we appreciate that as well.
That's good to hear. I like it.
Yeah.
I will make a comment about what the council member touched on about the fund. There is availability, but it's through the general fund because it can't be used from fees that developers pay to try to mitigate the costs of all the impact fees and whatnot. And what Councilmember Hitchen talked about was there's one major low-income development in near the Roy Y, right? At 283 units or something. And staff was telling me, well, the impact fees alone were about $2 million and the fund is only a couple $100,000. So, and it has to come from the general fund, right? So it's a challenge and it's something that we as a city, if we're gonna get serious about trying to mitigate fees for low-income projects, we're gonna have to have some serious discussions about how we fund that and to what extent. Because the sewer system, they'll have to work through their thing, but then there, there's rules around all
Right.
that stuff, right? So,
Well, if there's any ARPA money to be reprogrammed, maybe that's an opportunity. It's one-time money.
And if you're controlling it, you can get it out the door a little bit faster,
Mhm.
so. But, yeah, so other things, can I just bring up?
Absolutely.
Okay, so during, Chair Mello's in district, he had a presentation from the Tacoma, Youth Council. And I was like, hey, Lakewood has one of those.
Mhm.
And so I asked the, young lady if there might be interest if somehow we arrange the two youth councils to try and connect.
Mhm.
I don't control your youth council, so not my place, but I asked on behalf of you just as
Yeah.
to see if there was interest, and there was. I'm happy to do a connection.
Mhm.
I know that, the school district and the city do your kind of youth day, and that's like your big thing. But
The
if
summit,
if there
yeah.
was something you wanted to do to kind of get the two cities, because, it's one of those things where we think kids that youth really understand the geography and, that the kids over there have the same, like they have it better over there, right? And they
Mhm.
just like, they don't really, even though they have it on their phone, they don't really absorb it until they actually see a human being. Like there's something different about photos on Instagram or Snapchat or whatever the new
I think we could
thing is.
probably work on arranging kind of a little mini youth meeting between the two youth councils. That
Yeah.
should be something we can do. Yeah.
and we had our annual meeting with our youth council comes in every month, but we had our study session with them. And one of the things that we asked them to do was talk about their ideas about opioid, the use of those abatement dollars and what they thought in their, or at least get them to start thinking about what in their minds might actually work or be effective
Mhm.
for their age group, right? Because we talked about DARE last night and that
Mhm.
didn't work and various things that adults think that will work and that don't. So we're hoping and they said they would look into that. And I think that would be a good subject matter around for the Tacoma folks too, if they got together and said, what works, what doesn't,
Yeah.
what hits kids, what doesn't.
And I know the health department did a, RFP. I think it was an RFP, or it might have just been a competition, like, hey, come up with a plan, submit it, and we'll give you X or something. And, so, I know that they were pulling ideas from youth as well, and I know that, our HCA, the healthcare provider for our community, who was Elevate and now is Carillon, I think. They changed names. That,
Yeah.
that they've also trying to engage youth because there's power if it comes from youth. I think the best messaging campaign that ever came out of a youth was the one that had the lick the ashtray that
Right.
like resonated with kids.
Yeah.
And initially the adults were like, that's not gonna work because a kid would never lick an ashtray. And they're like, yeah, but what's the kid? I mean, like, it means something, like a kid can
Mhm.
imagine that. They could imagine, what that's like and you can't as an adult maybe, but yeah, a youth can, like that just, and it worked. It was super effective, which is one of the reasons we started flavoring vape juice and because then that message is gone, but that's a whole nother conversation. So, I think other than that, just really trying to be a thought partner in, youth violence. This
Mhm.
summer, we did, the council allocated to 5 school districts that were specifically chosen, who were seeing high rates of, crime in the area, emergency room visits, deaths, and then suicidal ideation and that kind of thing.
Right.
And so the 5 school districts that were selected were Tacoma, Clover Park, Bethel, Franklin Pierce, and Puyallup. And we allocated $75,000 to each of those school districts to relatively quickly do something this
Mhm.
summer to work
Good.
on kids' mental health. There's an interest in Clover Park to continue that, and actually they have. I don't know if they're using the ESSA dollars, but they've continued on Friday nights. Kids in Lakewood can go to the Y and just hang out and just be kids, which is fabulous.
Yeah.
That kind of came out of part of that, so I think there's
More funding for that
interest.
would be great. Yep.
Yeah, or just
Mhm.
conversations around
Mhm.
how we can get kids to really start to kind of heal from what's happened to them,
Mhm.
and the isolation that came out of the pandemic and the lack of, I'm gonna call it social skills.
Right.
As a teacher, just they lost the ability to
Mhm.
talk to another human being in a way that.
Because they're on the phone. does
Yeah,
something.
yeah. So, so I think continuing to kind of work with the school district around how we can support that. And I know there's a couple private schools in the community, making sure that they're aware of what's going on as well. If you're hearing things from families
Mhm.
that maybe aren't connected with the school district, they're still kids. They're still our kids,
Yeah.
you know, and so making sure that they're aware is always good because we all have different connections.
Absolutely.
So I think those are some of the big things. I'm
thank you.
continuing to go and
Yeah.
work on a variety of different things at the federal level and always happy to be a
Great.
thought partner and see where I can advocate.
Absolutely. Well, turn around the table and just see if there's any other thoughts. Mr. Caulfield? Do you have something?
Not to put the council member on the spot, but her and I were talking about Arrowhead and Partridge Glen.
Mhm.
And I know that's a big issue for her
Mhm.
because it's unincorporated Pierce
Right.
County. And, I think I would offer, if the city is interested, maybe in 2024, having a joint neighborhood meeting, if your office would, we could work together to kind of coordinate some kind of a meeting and, just have a discussion with the neighbors out there about what it would take to become part of the city, because it would be increased taxes and things along those lines. But also there would be a need for Pierce County to help out with some of the infrastructure needs out there. But if
Mhm.
Councilmember Hitchin, if you're interested in doing that, I think, the city, we should support her in that endeavor.
Yep,
at least
you can
to-
facilitate.
Yeah, I'm
some
happy to
work
do
and
it.
Meetings.
I will be running for office and the rules around that are I can't do, I can show up at a meeting, but like I can't publish things from March 30th to November 30th. It's a really long time. So so there's that. And the flip side of it is, if you're running it and you invite me and it's all through you, but I commit and I'll absolutely be there, then it's allowable. It's just, I can't. Does that make sense? Like there's.
Can't
some-
show up for.
No, I can't, I can show up places. I
Yeah.
can be wherever I want. I just can't use county dollars to publicize where I'm going to be. So
Oh, interesting.
like,
Okay.
I can't even put out my e-newsletter. I'm like, I've been putting those out every other week for
Mhm.
the 3 years I've been here and people like the week I missed one and I just forgot and I got emails like, where's your
Mhm.
newsletter? It's
Mhm.
supposed to be. So, anyway, so there's
Got it.
that, but
Yep.
just so you're
The
aware.
work is-
So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Certainly.
2024 is a long time. There's gonna be a lot going on, but
Right.
if you want it in 2024, just, if we decide to do it in the summer. Oh, okay, well, there we go. Thank you.
Any other thoughts? Councilmember Lauricella?
Sure. Just wanted to reiterate what I've heard from youth in our community about needing a space to gather. And
Mhm.
it's an opportunity for us to partner with the county. We lost our library for a while. I know folks like to gather there. The YMCA was a good opportunity over the summer.
Yep.
That could continue to be an opportunity if we can find ways to make that work. And then the community center that was run by the county has had some issues as well. So there may be new chances for us
Mhm.
to work together to find a solution so that youth in our community can gather and have a positive experience.
Okay, yeah, and we've had conversations about the Lakewood Community Center in the most recent plans. It's for us as a council and for the county, it's not penciling out to go in and rebuild it. And once you all figured out someplace for your senior center, we kind of figured out exactly what we need.
Mhm.
Right now, the plan is, the Specialized Recreation Center is living there and thriving there.
Mhm.
But the facility was not necessarily built for
Right.
that group with them in mind. And we're doing a complete reimagining inside Sprinker, which is unincorporated Pierce County. And so if we can move them there, then is there a way to, the land is available, the building's not being used, can we
Do something.
have some
Yeah.
sort of conversation?
Mhm.
And see if there's something that could happen on that site, because it's already got the lake, the
Mhm.
walking trails, it's got parking,
Mhm.
it's got the infrastructure, it's got the sidewalks and the bus lanes, it has everything,
Mhm.
but it has a failing building.
Mhm.
So, but wholeheartedly agree, it's, I
And
hear it
also
pretty
present a
regularly.
housing option too, potentially down the road.
Yep,
So,
Yep.
yeah.
so there's a lot. but-
Good. Any other thoughts for the good of the order? Well, we appreciate you coming as always. Yeah, it's been a nice tidy evening under an hour,
Well,
which is
when
what our
you-
hope
when you
was.
Outline everything in nice little talking points for me, it makes it really easy.
Well, we have to thank Mr. Vargas for that. So thank you, Mr. Vargas,
you.
for helping us not only be organized, but be comprehensive. So that's a good thing. Well, if there's nothing else to the good of the order, thank you. Have at another slice of pizza or two and enjoy your evening. Thank you again for coming.